Sue Durrant spent more than 40 years at Washington State University as a professor, coach, and administrator, receiving honors and recognition for her work on the court and in guiding female student athletes. From her first position as an instructor of the Women's Physical Education Department in 1962, through her time as a director of sport management in the Department of Educational Leadership and Counseling that culminated in 2005, Durrant was an award-winning educator as well as one of the finest coaches in school history. She led the volleyball program for 12 seasons from 1963 to 1975 and guided the women's basketball program for 10 seasons from 1971 to 72 and then again from 1973 through 82. She guided the basketball program to league titles in 1978 and 79 and previously captured the Northwest Regional Championships in 1972, advancing to the Sweet 16 of the AIAW Championship. Her winning percentage of .575 was the highest of any coach in program history with more than 2 years of service upon her retirement. Her greatest contribution to Washington State may have come with her work in the landmark Title IX case, Blair versus Washington State, which required equal treatment for female student athletes in the state of Washington. Durrant, along with others, championed the efforts of women's rights in collegiate athletics, which resulted in foundational changes in how universities support women's programs. Durrant received numerous awards for her work while at Washington State, including the Honor Fellow Award by the National Association for Girls and Women in Sport, Outstanding Services in Women's Sport by the Women's Sports Foundation, the Honors Award from the National Association of Collegiate Athletic Administrators, and the Lifetime Achievement Award by the President's Commission on the Status of Women. Tonight, Sue Durrant adds another lifetime honor to her resume as she's inducted into the Washington State University Athletic Hall of Fame.
Thank you very much. I'm old school, so I'm with paper. My thanks to the selection committee, even though you discovered that I'm on it, but I wasn't at this meeting. They knew I wouldn't be at the meeting, so maybe that's the reason I'm here tonight. To WSU Athletics and to all the student athletes that I had the privilege of coaching so many years ago. Those were the years prior to the passage of Title IX and prior to WSU's implementation of Title IX. I'm going to take you on a little look at the past. When I graduated from college, I never would have dreamed that there would be the high quality of women's intercollegiate athletic programs that we see today. During my college days, women's athletics did not exist. Those of us competing did participate in community and AAU programs that were available to us. Following graduation, I did coach and teach in the high school in Long Beach, California. These programs were very limited, but still they were better than any that I had ever experienced. When I arrived at WSU, I was surprised to find that there were some limited opportunities for women to compete. These were throughout the Northwest in field hockey, skiing, bowling, basketball, volleyball, and tennis. These were provided by the Women's Physical Education Department and all departments throughout the Northwest and through Western Canada. I was hired as an instructor in the Department of Physical Education, and my extracurricular or voluntary assignments were the women's volleyball team and fish fans. Some of you may remember the synchronized swimming club that was on campus for many years. This was in the 1960s. I know you're counting backwards. There were no paid coaching positions at this time. We were all teaching faculty. Informal tournaments and competitions were arranged by the coaches. Schools would host tournaments on various weekends at central locations that had good facilities. And we would play as many games or matches as we could in a weekend. For volleyball, this meant tournaments were held at Central Washington, University of Montana, Gonzaga, Eastern, and at WSU. We arranged for the officials, we set the courts, we did it all. There really were no budgets for women's sports. The Women's Physical Education Department did make arrangements for us to use WSU cars that were available through the campus motor pool. Thus, we coaches and our athletes did the driving. Beginning in the 1960s, women physical educators were developing regional and national structures for the governance of college women's sports, as the NCAA did not want to be involved with women's sports at that time. These organizations governed women's collegiate sports during the 60s, 70s, and into the 80s. In 1970, Dort Coleman, who had been coaching the women's basketball team for many years, decided to retire from the coaching aspect and just do her teaching responsibilities. And this sport was added to my load. So for 2 or 3 years, I did both volleyball and basketball, in addition to the teaching. In 1971, the first National Women's Basketball Tournament was held. This was sponsored by the Association for Athletics for Women, the AIAW, which was the national governing structure that had been developed. WSU qualified through our regional tournament and played in this 16-team national tournament. Throughout those early years, we were very successful basketball and volleyball programs which qualified for the regional tournaments many times, but only one team could advance to the national tournaments. There were no 64-team tournaments like we see today. After Title IX passed in 1972, high school programs rapidly developed interscholastic programs for girls. Unfortunately, most colleges lagged behind. At WSU, our players began to ask why our programs had not improved. Examples of the inequities were easy to find. Women sharing the main locker room with all the other women students on campus, where men had separate team locker rooms for most of their sports. Women providing their own practice gears and doing their own laundry, and men were provided with these services. Coaches of women's teams learned how to tape ankles and knees and did all the first aid, while men had a training room and full-time trainers. In travel, men's basketball and football used buses and flew to many events, while women did not have the budget to schedule buses or planes, except with very few exceptions. Men had many athletic scholarships, and women had 4 or 5 part-time scholarships for the whole program. And of course, coaches of women's sports were not paid coaching salaries. Oh my, times have changed. But at WSU, these came only after additional efforts. Unfortunately, WSU their continued response was mainly unresponsive and even resisted to change. So the athletes filed a Title IX complaint and then another one. And the athletes filed a Title VII complaint because we weren't covered by Title IX at that time. Title VII was opportunities, employment opportunities. These eventually were merged and became the lawsuit known as Blair versus Washington State University. Karen Blair Trujillo is still with the newspaper in the Yakima area. The trial took place in the early 1980s, but the case was not finalized until 1987. Then WSU started to make the changes. It should be noted that the Washington State Legislature was key in finding new monies to assist with the upgrades needed for women's programs at the 4-year institutions. Also, the legislature mandated other changes on campus that led to improvements in the entire college educational experience for women, for athletes, and for non-athletes. Today, from college presidents to athletic directors, Much more attention is given to providing strong programs and great facilities for both men's and women's programs. Just look at the progress that WSU has made. To the coaches and athletes of the Title IX era, you were extraordinary in your commitment to improve conditions for women athletes who would follow. Women physical educators grew the women's athletic programs in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. We developed regional and national organizations to govern women's sports. We were very successful. The NCAA then decided in the early 1980s that they could merge all those programs. To my colleagues both here at WSU and throughout the Northwest and beyond, we were and have been together on this journey for a long time. Throughout all, our guiding principle was to leave things better for those who would follow. I am pleased to have friends and some former players, coaches, and staff members here this evening to share this occasion with me. And thank you all very much for this nice honor. Thanks.